"Please, just make it quick," she said, yet the rancher dropped his rifle and held her instead. The desert held its breath that evening. Wind slid low across the red hills, scraping dust against my boots and biting through the seams of my coat. The sun was bleeding out behind the Dragoon Range, slow and mean, turning the world the color of rust and memory. They say silence in these parts ain't peace, it's a warning. I'd spent half my life listening to that silence. Out here, you learn to tell when the land's holding something back, and that night, it was. I was mending the west fence when I heard it wood creaking, slow and wrong, followed by a faint thud. Not wind, not cattle. Something alive, struggling. I froze, breath fogging in the chill. The sound came again from the old storage barn behind the ridge. Nobody used that place anymore. Nobody should have been there. I dropped the pliers, hand brushing the colt on my hip, and moved slow toward the sound. The grass hissed under my boots. The barn door hung crooked, banging in the wind. I pushed it open. The air inside was stale, hay, dust, sweat, rope, old blood. Light leaked through the boards in thin orange stripes. Then I saw her. She was hanging from a crossbeam, wrists bound, toes barely touching the dirt floor. Her head was bowed, black hair tangled across her face. The rope groaned with each shallow breath she tried to take. For a second, I couldn't move. I'd seen death before, but this was a cruelty that stank of men, not beasts. I holstered the gun and lunged forward, cutting the rope with my knife. She fell hard, dead weight into my arms, coughing, gasping for the air that had nearly left her for good. Her skin was dark with dust and blood, her dress torn, her wrists raw. I laid her down gently on the hay. Her eyes flickered open wide, brown, defiant even through the pain. For a moment, the barn was utterly still. The wind outside moaned through the cracks like a hymn for the dying. "Easy," I said, voice low. "You're safe now." Her lips moved dry, trembling. Words came out broken, maybe Navajo, maybe prayer. Then, barely audible, "Help, please." Her voice wasn't just sound. It was the echo of something the desert had forgotten how to feel: mercy. I tore a strip from my coat, wrapped her wrists, checked her pulse. She was light as kindling, burning up with fever and rope burn. Whoever left her there hadn't planned for her to live past sunset. I didn't think, I just acted. Carried her outside, into the dying light. The wind caught her hair, and for a heartbeat, it looked like smoke rising from ashes. The horizon was a wall of fire, sun gone but still bleeding red. My horse, Jasper, snorted when he saw us. I laid her across the saddle, swung up, and turned toward home. Every hoofbeat hit like a heartbeat against the earth. The wind rose behind us, carrying sand and secrets. I could feel her pulse against my chest, weak, but there, alive. For now, the cabin came into view, a black shape against the dying sky. I kicked the door open, laid her down on the cot, and struck a match. The lamp flickered to life, gold light licking the rough wood walls. The place smelled of smoke and sweat, but it was home, the only piece of order left in a lawless land. She didn't move. I took a rag, poured whiskey on it, and cleaned her wounds the best I could. She stirred once, a low sound from her throat, part pain, part defiance. That sound stuck in me deeper than any bullet ever had. I wrapped her ribs tight, tore my old shirt for bandages, and fed the fire higher. Outside, the wind had turned meaner, clawing at the shutters. When I leaned close, her eyes opened, dark, wide, and alive. She looked at me like a man looks at a storm, afraid, but too proud to turn away. "Who did this?" I asked quietly. Her lips moved, barely sound. "Men. White coats. Guns." Then her gaze flicked toward the door, panic sharp as a blade. I froze, and that's when I heard it far off, faint, but clear enough to chill the blood. Hoofbeats, carried by the wind. Not many, but enough. I doused the lamp, reached for the rifle. The girl tried to sit up, but I pressed a hand to her shoulder. "Stay down," I said. For a moment, only the wind spoke. Then the hoofbeats stopped. Whoever was out there knew this land. They were waiting, listening. The cabin walls creaked. The fire hissed low. I could smell gun oil, my own sweat, the faint trace of blood on her skin. I'd seen ambushes before. I'd been the ambusher once, but this was different. This time, I wasn't the hunter. I waited in the dark, every sense stretched tight as wire. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time doesn't mean much when you're counting heartbeats. Then, from somewhere out beyond the corral, a voice cut through the night. "Hand her over, rancher. You know what she is." The girl's hand found my sleeve, trembling, cold. "Please," she whispered, "don't let them take me." I didn't answer. I just checked the rifle's chamber and moved to the window. Moonlight touched the edge of the hills, silvering the dust. 3 riders, their faces hidden by dusters and shadows. The one in front had a voice that carried like dry thunder. "She's government property. You interfere, you die with her." I didn't know what they wanted, or what she'd done, but I knew the look of men who killed for coin. I'd seen that look in my own mirror once. I stepped into the doorway, rifle leveled, and said the only thing that mattered. "She's not yours, Lee." The leader spat in the dirt. "Then you'll die for her, old man." "Maybe," I said, "but not tonight." The wind cut between us, sharp and cold. The first gun flashed, a crack of light splitting the dark. Wood splintered near my shoulder. I fired back once, twice, the recoil steady, clean. One man fell. The others turned, fading into the dust like wraiths. Then, silence again. I waited, breath heavy, finger tight on the trigger. No sound but the wind. Inside, the girl had passed out, face pale as ash. I leaned the rifle against the wall, poured the last of the whiskey into a cup, and took a long, burning swallow. Outside, the desert exhaled. Whatever peace was left in this world, it wouldn't come easy. Not for me. Not for her. I looked at her one last time before the dark took us both. And for the first time in years, I prayed. If you enjoy the story, hit that subscribe button right away. And if you don't, then just hit the like button anyway to keep more Wild West love stories coming. The night didn't end when the shooting stopped. It just changed shape, became quieter, heavier, the kind of silence that waits for the next thing to break. I spent the rest of that dark stretch patching the door with a plank and an old nail, listening to the wind slide through the gaps. The smell of burnt powder still hung thick, mixed with wood smoke and sweat. The girl hadn't moved. I knelt by her again, checked her pulse. It was there, thin, stubborn, alive. She was tougher than she looked. I'd seen grown men bleed out from less. When the fire cracked, she flinched. That tiny jolt hit me harder than the gunfire had. "You're safe now," I said quietly. "Ain't nobody getting through that door tonight." Her eyes opened slow, dark brown, like the soil after rain if this land ever remembered rain. She tried to speak, her mouth too dry for words. I held the cup to her lips. She drank, coughing once, but didn't look away. "Name's Eli," I told her. "You don't have to talk yet." For a moment, the only sound was wind scratching the cabin walls. Then she whispered, voice soft as a match flame, "Ayanna." That was it. One word. A name that sounded like prayer and grief at the same time. I nodded. "All right, Ayanna. You rest. We'll talk when you've got strength." But rest didn't come easy. The wind howled again outside, and I could almost hear those riders circling somewhere in the dark, waiting for dawn or courage, whichever came first. I stoked the fire, set another board across the window. Every hammer tap echoed through the room like a warning bell. My hands remembered how to fight, even if my heart wanted no part of it anymore. I'd built this cabin to keep the world out. Now it was the last thing keeping her in it. Hours passed. The flames settled low. I sat in the chair, cleaning the rifle by lamplight. My shoulder ached, my ribs stiff from crawling across the floor earlier. She stirred on the cot, eyes following the motion of my hands. You fight like soldier," she murmured. "I was," I said. "A long time ago." Her gaze didn't leave me. "Apache War?" I looked at the floorboards. "Some of it, yeah." The words fell heavy between us. The war wasn't something men here talked about much, not if they still wanted to sleep through the night. "After a while," she said, "my father died in that war. Army burned our home. They said it was justice. Lem." I met her eyes then. Justice don't look the same from both sides of a rifle. She didn't answer, but something in her face shifted. Not forgiveness, maybe understanding. Or maybe she just saw how tired I was of being part of anything called war. The wind hit the door hard enough to make the hinges cry. I rose, peered through a crack, saw nothing but dust drifting under the moon. The land out there looked dead, but I'd lived here long enough to know that dead things move when you stop watching. When I came back to the fire, she was sitting up, a blanket around her shoulders. "You shouldn't be on your feet," I said. "I can't sleep," she replied. Her English was slow, careful. "The wind, it sounds like them." I poured 2 cups of coffee, thick and black as tar, handed her one. She took it in both hands, warming her fingers on the tin. "Who are they?" I asked. She stared into the fire. "Men from Tucson. They take land. Say they buy from government, but they take it with guns. My father tried to stop them." "Those men out there tonight? Same ones?" She nodded. "They want to finish what they started." I leaned back, feeling the weight of it all settle on me like dust. The pattern was old. Men with money, soldiers with orders, families caught in the middle. Same story, different graves. She looked at me again. Why help me? I didn't have an answer ready. Maybe because I'd once failed someone who needed help. Maybe because she reminded me that mercy wasn't extinct yet. I shrugged. Seemed wrong not to. A small smile tugged at her lips, quick as a breeze through dry grass. "Then you are different." I shook my head, just slower to forget. The firelight flickered over her face, cuts, bruises, streaks of dirt. But under it all, there was steel, the kind that didn't break, just bent and waited. Outside, coyotes started calling from the ridge, the kind of sound that makes you wonder what they know that you don't. I checked the rifle one last time, then leaned it by the door. "You should lie down," I told her. She did, still holding the coffee, still watching the flames. After a while, her eyes drifted closed, breath soft and steady. I sat there listening, counting each rise and fall of her chest. It'd been years since I'd shared a room with another soul. The sound of breathing that wasn't mine filled the place in ways I hadn't expected. It was like hearing music from a half-forgotten song, one you thought you'd buried with the rest of your mistakes. I stayed up till the first gray hint of dawn slipped under the door. The desert outside had gone quiet again, too quiet. I knew they weren't gone. Men like that don't quit just because the night does. But for now, the girl slept. The fire burned low, and I let myself believe in the small lie that we were safe. A lark sang somewhere beyond the ridge. The first in weeks. Maybe a good sign, maybe not. Either way, the sun was coming, and with it, whatever hell the day had planned. If you like Wild West love stories or Wild West stories, drop a bunch of 1 second and your place in the comments for the Wild West Love channel. Tell me where you're listening from, so I don't feel so alone out here. By noon the next day, the wind had died, and that was worse. Still, air in the desert means something's watching. I'd learned that the hard way. Even the flies were quiet, circling lazy over the horse trough. The heat sat heavy, pressing down on everything until the air itself felt like a held breath. Out here, silence never came alone, it brought trouble with it. Ayanna sat by the window, skin pale but eyes sharp, like a hawk that had seen too much sky. She'd healed enough to stand, but not enough to run. I could tell she knew what I hadn't said aloud. The men from last night weren't gone. They were regrouping, waiting for the right wind. That morning, I'd found their sign. Tracks in the sand behind the corral, fresh, heading toward the ridge. 3 riders, maybe 4. Hoofprints too deep to belong to drifters. They'd circled wide, the way wolves do when they're tired of waiting for the gate to open. When I came back inside, dust streaked across my shirt. I dropped my hat on the table. "They'll come before dusk," I said. She looked up from the tin cup in her hands. The water inside barely rippled. "Then we don't run?" "No," I said. "Run in daylight. We die. Stay here. We've got a chance." Her brow furrowed. "Chance?" I nodded toward the walls. "Wood's dry, easy to burn. But I know every inch of this place. They don't." Her eyes went to the rifle leaning by the door, then back to me. "You fought before," she said softly. "Too many times. She studied me a moment longer, that mix of curiosity and fear people get when they can't decide whether to trust the man standing between them and death. The truth was, I didn't know which side of that I stood on either. We spent the next hour readying what little we had. I filled the lamps with oil, cut strips of rag for wicks, scattered nails near the doorway, makeshift caltrops, something to slow a man's step. Ayanna helped without question. Her movements were slow, deliberate, no wasted motion. At one point, she stopped, her fingers tracing the rough wood of the window frame. "This place," she murmured. "You built it alone." "Yeah," I said. "Every board." She nodded, almost to herself. "Then it's strong, like its maker." That drew something out of me I hadn't felt in years, a real smile, small and foreign on my face. "You give me too much credit." "Not enough," she replied. Outside, the light shifted. Clouds gathered over the ridge, not rain clouds, but dust clouds. Riders. By the time we heard the first echo of hooves, the sun was already lowering, the world steeped in amber and heat. I loaded both rifles, laid a revolver beside her on the table. She didn't flinch when I handed it over. Her hands were steady. Her eyes, dark and bright, belonged to someone who'd already decided what she was willing to die for. "You know how to use one?" I asked. She looked me dead in the eye. "My father taught me before they burned our home." That was all I needed to hear. I took a breath and listened. Hooves. A faint rattle of tack. Then quiet again, too quiet. The kind that makes a man's heartbeat sound like thunder in his own ears. Then came the first shot, sudden, vicious, a crack through the window that split the kerosene lamp in half, spraying flame across the table. The air went white hot. "Down!" I shouted, grabbing her as glass rained around us. Smoke filled the room quick. I kicked the burning lamp aside, stamped out what I could. The smell of oil and ash burned my throat raw. "They're trying to smoke us out," I yelled. Ayanna crawled toward the back wall, coughing hard. I grabbed a wet rag from the wash bucket, tossed it to her. "Cover your mouth." Through the swirling haze, I saw movement outside. 3 men. One with a red bandana, one tall and lean, moving like a whip about to strike. And behind them, their leader. The same bastard who'd spoken in the dark last night. He had a scar running from his temple to his jaw, white against his sunburned skin, and he wore a grin like sin. "Come on out, rancher," he called, his voice carrying smooth and cruel. "Ain't no law coming to save you. Hand over the girl and I'll let you die clean." I leaned out just enough to aim, squinting through the smoke. My finger tightened on the trigger. The shot took his hat clean off his head. "Go to hell," I said. He laughed low, ugly. "You'll get there first." Then the shooting started for real. The next few minutes were chaos, bullets splintering the walls, the sound of glass shattering, smoke thick enough to blind. Ayanna stayed low beside me, reloading the revolver with quick, sure hands. I fired until the rifle clicked empty, then switched to the Colt. Each shot felt like I was buying time, one heartbeat at a time. Plaster rained from the ceiling. The air was alive with splinters and heat, then silent. The kind that doesn't comfort. The kind that waits. I crouched by the window, eyes scanning the dust. Nothing moved. Even the wind had gone still. Ayanna's hand caught my sleeve. "Eli," she whispered. "The back." I turned. A shadow slipped past the rear wall. They were circling, trying to flank. I grabbed the shotgun and kicked open the back door. The blast of light and heat hit me like a hammer. The first man came running, gun raised. I didn't think. I just moved. He swung first, bad move. I caught his wrist, drove the barrel into his gut, pulled the trigger. The blast lit up the yard like lightning, the sound echoing off the rocks. He dropped. The second man came out of nowhere, slamming me into the dirt. My gun flew. His hands clamped around my throat, squeezing hard. His breath stank of whiskey and blood. The world went red around the edges. Then I heard her scream, my name, and then a gunshot. His body went slack, heavy as guilt. I shoved him off and turned. Ayanna stood in the doorway, the revolver trembling in her grip, smoke still rising from the barrel. Her eyes were wide, not with fear, but with something sharper resolve. I staggered up, chest heaving. "You all right?" She nodded once. "You taught me something," she said quietly. What's that? To finish what starts. I barked out a laugh, raw, broken, half sob. You're a damn brave woman, Ayanna. Before she could answer, another voice rose louder, closer, thick with rage. You kill my men, old man, and I swear I'll burn you both to ash. The leader. The sound came from the front yard. I turned, saw him standing in the doorway, the glow of the fire crawling up behind him, turning his shadow long and cruel. The broken lamp had done its job too well. The curtain was burning now, flames climbing fast, greedy and loud. Smoke filled the room. The heat punched at us. I grabbed Ayanna's hand. We're done here, I said. Out the back. Go. We ran through the side door, bursting into open air. The sky was bleeding red with sunset, the whole world burning. The horses were tied behind the shed, eyes rolling, nostrils flaring with fear. I threw the saddlebags up, shoved her toward Jasper. Ride south, I shouted over the roar of the fire. Don't stop till the stars are behind you. She hesitated, eyes bright with something that wasn't just fear. What about you? I'll be right behind. She didn't believe me, smart woman. But she climbed up anyway, jaw tight, pain forgotten. As she rode off, I turned back toward the cabin. The leader was there, framed by the inferno, pistol raised. The fire behind him turned his outline to a shape out of hell, red, black, endless. He raised his gun. I raised mine. We both fired. The sound tore the sky in two. When the smoke cleared, he was down. The world tilted again, and I felt warmth spreading through my side. Didn't matter whose blood it was. All blood looks the same under firelight. The cabin groaned, the roof cracking as flames ate through the rafters. Every board I'd built with my own hands turned to cinders before my eyes. I stood there long enough to feel the heat on my face, the sting in my lungs. Then I turned. The horse waited, restless but loyal. I swung up, pain screaming through me, and rode south, following the faint dust trail Ayanna had left behind. Behind me, the cabin collapsed in on itself with a sound like thunder, a final punctuation mark to the life I'd buried in those walls. Each hoofbeat carried me farther from what I'd lost, closer to what might still be saved. The land swallowed the fire, the smoke. The past left only darkness and wind. And somewhere ahead, through that darkness, Ayanna waited. Hey there, friend, take a moment and get yourself a full glass of water. Your body will thank you. Hey there, friend, take a moment and get yourself a full glass of water. It's easy to forget, but staying hydrated is crucial for your health. Also, if you've been sitting for a while, do a quick lap around the room and give your eyes a break from the screen. Your body will thank you. We rode into the dark without looking back. Behind us, the cabin burned, flames climbing high into the desert night, licking at the clouds like fingers of a jealous god. It wasn't much of a home, but it had been mine until Mercy turned it into a battleground. The smell of smoke followed us, clinging to my coat, to her hair, to every breath we took. The desert swallows things fast. Smoke, gunfire, even sins. You can lose your whole life out there, and it'll cover you with one sweep of wind, like nothing ever happened. All that was left now was the sound of hooves and the rasp of my breath, steady but shallow. Ayanna rode ahead, guiding us through the arroyos where shadows cut deep and the air smelled of sage and wet dust. She moved like she belonged to the land. Maybe she did. She didn't look back, not once. I figured she didn't trust what she'd see if she did, just the red glow dying behind us, proof that we'd burned our past to stay alive. The moon rose slow and white, a cold eye in the sky. Under its light, the desert looked like a graveyard turned to silver. Every ridge, every rock, wore the same face, indifferent. My shoulder burned where the bullet had grazed me, but I kept the horse steady. Pain was just another kind of rhythm. Once you matched it, you could ride it. By the time we stopped, dawn was a thin scar on the horizon, a pale promise no one had asked for. I slid off Jasper, knees gone weak. The ground tilted, the world went soft around the edges. Ayanna caught me before I hit the dirt. She was smaller than me, but strong, stronger than both of us combined, maybe. You're bleeding, she said, her voice calm, like naming it might slow it down. Not the first time, I muttered, because a man's pride dies harder than he does. She half dragged, half guided me beneath a rocky overhang. The air there was cool, the light gray and merciful. She tore strips from her dress beautiful fabric once, now sacrifice, and pressed them against the wound in my side. The pain came sharp, then dull, settling into something I could bargain with. I bit it down, breathed through my teeth. "You saved me," I said. Her hands didn't stop moving. "You saved me first." That should have ended it, but it didn't. The space between us filled with the sound of wind, with the faint trickle of sand down the rock face. Her breathing was steady, slow, the kind of patience born from long winters and too much waiting. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, softer, deliberate. "Where will you go now?" I looked past her, out to the rim of the world. Don't rightly know. Used to think this land was all I needed. But land don't keep you warm. Don't talk back either. A smile tugged at her mouth. "The land remembers. It listens. You just don't hear right." That drew a laugh out of me, quiet, rough. "You sound like my mother." Was she kind? Kind enough to break me when I needed breaking. She nodded as if she understood more than I'd said. Maybe she did. Silence settled again, not awkward, just heavy with the kind of knowing that don't need words. Only two people who've looked death in the eye and decided to live can share that kind of silence. At some point I must have drifted. When I woke, the sun had climbed high, and the light bouncing off the rocks was too bright to bear. Ayana knelt nearby, grinding something with a flat stone. The smell hit first, bitter herbs, wild and green. She mixed the powder with water, held the paste out to me. "Drink." I sniffed it. "Smells like horse sweat. It will stop the fever." I took a swallow and gagged. "And start another kind of pain." Her lips twitched almost a smile. "You talk too much. Most folks say not enough." About. She leaned close, her shadow falling over me, her hand cool against my forehead. "You fight with words like you fight with guns, careful, but too late." I looked at her, then really looked. Her face was streaked with soot, hair tangled, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. But under all that was something unbroken. Not pride, not even hope. Just the kind of strength that refuses to die because it doesn't know how. It made me feel small and human and alive all at once. The hours dragged. The desert stretched out forever, hills like bones of giants, sky white and pitiless. We chewed jerky, drank from a dented canteen, said little. Every so often she murmured words in her own tongue, short, musical phrases that might have been prayers or maybe curses. I didn't ask. Some languages ain't meant for translation. By afternoon the air changed. You can feel a storm before you see it. The light goes copper, the wind gets teeth. Clouds stacked up on the horizon like mountains moving. Ayana shaded her eyes. "Storm coming." "Always is," I said. We mounted again. The wind rose, bringing dust that stung our faces. She pointed ahead. "There's a canyon. My people used to camp there. Maybe it's still safe." I nodded, though I didn't believe in safe anymore. We rode into the storm, blind half the time. The world turned to chaos, sand whipping like glass, thunder rolling overhead. Jasper stumbled once, caught himself. Ayana's braid lashed behind her, black against the red dust, like defiance made flesh. The storm tore at us, stripped us to bone and will, but she never slowed. I followed because there was nothing else to do. Then, as sudden as it came, it broke. The sky split open with rain, hard, clean, merciful. It hit the ground in sheets, hissing off the rocks. I hadn't felt rain in months, maybe years. We stopped beneath an old mesquite. The water ran off our faces, cold enough to shock the breath back into me. Ayana tilted her head back, eyes closed, letting it wash her clean. My mother used to say storms wash away the ghosts. "Then I've got a few that could use a scrubbing," I said, rubbing blood and soot from my hands. She turned, rain streaking her cheeks, the drops catching light like tears that didn't hurt anymore. "Maybe the ghosts aren't meant to go. Maybe they walk beside us so we don't forget who we were." Oh, that sat in me like a bullet that wouldn't come out. The rain softened, the air cooled, and for the first time since the cabin burned, the weight on my chest eased. We pushed on till twilight. The canyon she'd promised opened before us, narrow, hidden, a scar carved deep into the land. A thin stream glimmered at the bottom, singing its low song. We dismounted. She gathered what wood she could, though most of it was soaked. Somehow, she coaxed a fire from it anyway, breathing life into the coals, like she was whispering secrets only the earth would understand. I watched her hands move precise, sure. The same hands that had stitched me up, that had steadied the gun when death came calling. When the fire caught, she sat across from me, knees drawn to her chest. "You'll sleep," she said. "I will watch. You need rest more than I do." She shook her head, eyes on the flames. "I've slept too long already. You dream. I'll keep the ghosts busy." And so I did. The ground was hard, but softer than guilt. The fire cracked gentle. Her humming filled the space between worlds. When I woke, the night hadn't gone yet. The fire was still alive, embers glowing like eyes in the dark. She was there, still watching, humming that same low tune, a song that didn't belong to words, only to the land. She looked over, smiled faintly. "You dream?" "Didn't need to," I said. "Already in one." For a heartbeat, she almost laughed. "Instead," she said, "you talk like old men from the canyon. They see too much." "Maybe so," I said. "Maybe seeing too much is all that's left for men like me." She turned back to the fire, nodding slowly. "Then you're not finished yet." Her shadow danced across the canyon wall, long and graceful, like the spirit of something that refused to die. Outside, the wind shifted soft this time, almost kind. I lay back, watching sparks drift up toward the stars. The sky was wide open again, clean and endless. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to be anywhere else. The ghosts could walk beside us if they wanted. I'd stopped running from them. If you're watching on TV, don't hesitate, grab your phone and hit subscribe to my channel so you'll never miss out on our amazing characters. When morning came, the world looked washed clean, like the desert had decided, for once, to forgive itself. The storm had scrubbed every cruel edge from the land, leaving behind a quiet that felt almost holy. The canyon walls burned red in the early light, their faces glowing like embers that refused to die. Below us, a thin stream murmured through the stones, whispering secrets older than men, older than grief itself. The smell of wet dust filled the air, a smell most folks would call nothing, but to me it was everything, proof that the earth still remembered how to breathe. Ayana was already awake. She sat by the fire, her back straight, her hair loose and long, catching the new light like a dark river. She moved slow, patient, braiding it with fingers that still trembled from exhaustion. The smoke rose between us in silver threads, twisting upward like prayers with no words. When she looked at me, a small smile crossed her face, quiet, fragile, but alive. "You live," she said. "Guess I do," I muttered, voice rough as gravel after rain. The words scraped their way out of me, but they felt good, real. "Then the storm chose to let you stay." I tried to sit, winced when my ribs complained. "Didn't know storms made choices." "They always do," she said, eyes still on the horizon. "They decide who's strong enough to walk after." I didn't answer. Her words carried a kind of truth that didn't need agreement. Out here, survival wasn't luck, it was faith made flesh, carved into your bones one scar at a time. We packed slow. The silence between us wasn't empty anymore. It was full of what we'd been through, full of what neither of us dared to name. The land was quiet, and that quiet felt earned. My shirt was stiff with dried blood. Her dress, torn and patched, was a story written in dust and thread. We looked like two people who'd made peace with the dirt, and maybe that was enough. By the time we mounted up, the sun had just cleared the ridge. The world spread wide before us, hills rolling like waves frozen in time, sagebrush glittering with dew, and the sky stretching farther than memory. We didn't speak much. Some silences deserve respect. Some words would only cheapen what was already understood. We rode side by side, the horses' hooves thudding soft into the damp sand. The air smelled of mesquite and faraway rain. Every now and then, Ayana would glance back not at me, but at the trail we'd left, two lines carved into the wet earth, already fading in the light. Around mid-morning, she lifted a hand and pointed toward the east. "There," she said, "beyond the red hills, My people. I followed her gaze. Far off, where the earth met the sky, a curl of smoke rose thin, peaceful, human. A hidden camp, maybe. A place the world forgot to ruin. The sight hit me strange. I'd been riding this country for years, but that thin thread of smoke was the first thing that looked like belonging. I pulled the reins, slowing Jasper to a stop. "You should go," I said. "They'll need you." She turned to me, eyes unreadable. "And you?" "I've got fences to rebuild." She tilted her head slightly. "Fences keep people out." "Sometimes," I said. "Sometimes they keep the wind from taking everything." Ayanna's mouth curved, half sad, half wise. "You are a strange man, Eli Mercer. Most men worth remembering are," I told her, and it almost made her laugh. The wind picked up, tugging at her braid, carrying a chill that smelled of change. She dismounted, boots sinking slightly into the soft red earth. Her shadow stretched long across the ground, touching mine. She walked over, slow, sure, and laid her hand over the wound in my side. The touch was light, but it carried weight, the kind that draws a man back to himself. "You carry too much ghost," she murmured. "Let some go." "Working on it," I said, trying for a smile, though it came out crooked. Her eyes lifted to mine, no fear, no pity, just quiet strength. The kind that asks nothing but truth. She said softly, "In my tongue, Ayanna means eternal flower, but it also means what grows again after fire." That stopped me cold. I looked at her, at the dawn stretching behind her, ash-colored, glowing, alive, and I thought, maybe that's what we were. Two souls burned down to the roots, stubborn enough to bloom again. She took a slow breath, turned back to her horse, and for a moment I wanted to stop her. But you don't cage something that's born to run free. She mounted, the sunlight catching her braid, turning it gold at the edges. Dust swirled around her like a halo made of earth and light. Before she left, she looked back. "You saved more than my life, Eli." The words hit like a shot you don't see coming. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "You gave me something I thought I'd buried." She tilted her head, the ghost of a smile playing on her lips. "What?" "Faith," I said, "in something better than what's left of us." That seemed to settle something in her eyes, not peace exactly, but understanding. She touched two fingers to her heart, then to the horizon, a gesture older than words, older than forgiveness itself. Then she turned and rode toward the red hills. Her silhouette grew smaller with each heartbeat, until it was just a smudge of motion against the light. But even when she was gone, the space she'd left behind stayed warm, like the echo of a fire that refused to die. I sat there a while longer, letting the wind talk. It said things only the desert understands about loss, about mercy, about how sometimes they're the same thing. When I finally turned my horse west, the sun was high and bright, glinting off the wet stones. The land looked endless again, but not empty. Never empty. The ghosts still walked beside me, sure, but they didn't whisper blame anymore. Their voices were softer now, maybe even proud. I stopped once, near a ridge where the wind ran free. From there, the valley stretched for miles, a sea of gold and red and promise, the kind of vastness that humbles a man back into something honest. I took off my hat, let the wind have its way with my hair, and laughed a low, cracked sound that felt like the first real thing in years. It wasn't joy, exactly. It was something steadier, the sound of a man who'd stopped running from the sound of his own heart. If you've made it this far, I know you're a true fan of WWL. The sun climbed higher, spilling gold over the hills like forgiveness. Somewhere, a hawk cried a long, mournful call that split the sky wide open. It echoed off the cliffs, sharp and clean, a promise that maybe nothing is ever truly lost if you remember how to look for it. I nudged Jasper forward, slow and steady, back toward where my fences waited. The ashes of the cabin would be cold by now. Maybe I'd build another. Maybe I wouldn't. Because some things, once burned, don't need rebuilding. They need replanting. And the earth, stubborn as ever, still remembered my hands. The wind shifted again, brushing my cheek like a blessing. I looked back once, toward the red hills, and thought I saw movement there, or maybe it was just the shimmer of heat. Either way, I smile, because sometimes redemption ain't about changing the world. It's about standing still long enough to feel it change you. And for the first time in a lifetime, that felt like enough. Today's story is about pains that seemed to have no way out until a small ray of light changed everything. Do you believe that, even in the darkest times, there's always a miracle waiting at the end of the road? And if deep down you still believe that God is watching over you, quietly arranging everything, then right now, leave a comment, AMEN, below this video. Because who knows, at the very moment you write it, a blessing may quietly find its way into your life.